a crowded cafe, one blind date, and a millionaire who sat at the wrong table, expecting charm, glamour, and lies. Instead, he found a girl with cracked fingers, a chipped plate, and half a piece of warm bread. She didn't know who he was. She only saw a tired man and shared what little she had. What she didn't know, that single act would change not only his evening, but the rest of his life. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. A chair scraped across the floor. Just one. Luke Sanders had never felt more out of place in his own city than he did now. Standing in the doorway of a modest cafe that smelled like warm butter and old furniture polish. He had expected something sleeker, something curated, candlelit, maybe with imported napkins folded like origami. But this place had mismatched plates and tea stains on the menus. The glass door chimed every time someone walked in or out, and the server, bright-eyed, apron smudged, had greeted him with a sweetie and a wink, like he was a regular. He wasn't. Not here. Not anywhere. Still, he walked toward the corner table that had just emptied. 2 mugs left behind, one still warm, and sat down. No one noticed, which was strange. Usually, people noticed Luke Sanders. Not because he wanted them to, but because they recognized the man from magazine covers, press conferences, or the food critic column that once dubbed him the soul behind the city's most exclusive cuisine empire. Now, no tie, no bodyguards, no assistant with an iPad whispering his next move. Just him, in a gray coat with coffee on the sleeve, trying to remember why he agreed to a blind date in the first place. His friend Darren said it was time. That even control freaks like you deserve to sit across from someone interesting now and then. But the longer he sat there, the more he wondered if this was a mistake. Especially because the girl wasn't here. Not the one from the app. Not the one with perfect lighting and dog filters and "I love long walks through Whole Foods" in her bio. Just then, someone approached. But it wasn't her. She had no makeup, no glossy heels, no expensive purse slung over her shoulder. In fact, she looked more like she'd been running late from somewhere that didn't offer sick days. Her coat was too thin for December, and her fingers, red from cold, chapped, hands of someone who worked in a kitchen or carried crates or washed dishes, not someone who painted them for pictures. She paused, looked at him, then the chair across from him. "You mind if I sit here for a minute?" she asked, motioning to the empty seat. "Everywhere else is packed, and I swear my toes are about to snap off." Luke blinked. Sure." He expected her to stay standing while he left. Instead, she slid into the chair, fished a paper napkin from her coat pocket, and unwrapped half a piece of bread. "Sorry," she said, offering it. "They gave me extra. And you look like you've had a long day." Luke stared. She offered him bread. Not because she recognized him. Not because she wanted something. Just because. "No one's ever shared bread with me in a place I technically own," he murmured. "Come again." "Nothing." He took the half. It was warm, soft, maybe rye. She smiled faintly, biting into hers. "It's the only thing I could afford today that wasn't soup." Bread's comforting, though, isn't it? Kinda says, "Hey, today was hard, but you survived it." He nodded, watching her carefully. She didn't ask his name, didn't scan the room for cameras, didn't check her phone, just sat with him, quietly, like she belonged there, like he wasn't a broken man sitting in the wrong spot waiting for someone who wouldn't come. He found himself speaking without thinking. "Do you always offer strangers half your bread?" Only the ones who look like they haven't tasted something real in a while. Luke laughed, quiet and surprised. He hadn't laughed in months. Not really. Not since the boardroom betrayal. The headlines. The retreat from everything he built. And now, a girl in a thrifted coat with wind-burned cheeks was undoing that silence with a piece of bread and a sentence that landed like truth. She glanced toward the window. "I should go. Didn't mean to take your table." "Stay," came out too quickly. She blinked. "You're waiting for someone, right?" He hesitated, thought of the profile, the plan, the image, then looked at the bread in his hand. "No," he said softly. "I think I already found who I was supposed to meet. I'm Alice, by the way." She said it like an afterthought, like her name didn't carry much weight, just a syllable she'd worn for years without polishing. Luke liked that. "I'm Luke." She nodded, blowing gently on her paper cup of tea. "Well, Luke, thanks for letting me warm up. I didn't think they'd let me sit anywhere that didn't have a reserved sign." He smiled faintly. "Technically, this table is reserved." Her eyes widened. "Oh no. Seriously? You should have said something. I can move." He raised a hand. "Don't. Please. Stay." Alice hesitated, then settled back into the chair, wrapping both hands around the cup. A strand of dark hair fell into her face, and she tucked it behind her ear in a motion that was somehow both practiced and shy. Her coat had a missing button. Her sleeves were frayed at the cuffs. And yet, she sat like someone who owned her space no matter how borrowed. Luke leaned forward slightly. "So what brought you here?" Alice tilted her head. "Soup, technically, but mostly my friend, Jenna. She said this place sometimes gives extra bread near closing time, and that if I smiled sweetly enough, someone might let me sit at their table." He laughed again. "So I'm part of a plan. Only the warm part of it." Silence settled, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was something softer, restful. Luke glanced at her hands, fingertips faintly stained orange red, like someone who worked around spices or sauce. "Where do you work?" She shrugged. "Today, the bakery on 12th. Yesterday, the bookstore warehouse. And this weekend, I help out at the Children's Center on Main. I float around, wherever I'm needed." 3 jobs. "Well, one job with 3 names," she said with a crooked grin. "Helps pay rent and keep the lights on." She didn't say it with bitterness. No self-pity, just reality. Luke looked down at the bread again. It wasn't perfect, slightly overbaked, a little cracked on one side, but warm, honest, and shared. "Do you always do this?" he asked. "What?" "Offer food to strangers. Only when they look hungry in a different way." That line stuck in his chest. Hungry in a different way. He'd eaten meals prepared by chefs flown in from 3 countries in one night. He'd sipped wine from bottles that cost more than the average car. He'd launched 12 restaurants across 5 cities, and still no one had ever asked if he was fed in the places that mattered most. Alice glanced at the clock and sighed. "I really should go. Jenna gets twitchy when I don't text back, and I promised to pick up her shift at the bakery tomorrow." Luke searched for something to say. Anything that would keep her here just 5 minutes longer. But all that came out was, "Thank you for the bread." She smiled and stood. "Thank you for the table." And just like that, she was gone, walking out into the snow with her hands stuffed in her pockets and her shoulders slightly hunched. Luke stayed seated, unmoving. Then slowly, without looking up, he pulled out his phone and opened the app. There it was, the profile, The real blind date, Tiffany R. With perfect lipstick and wine enthusiast in her bio, still marked as on the way. And just then the door chimed. She entered. Blonde, confident, long coat. She scanned the room and looked straight at him. But he wasn't alone. He was sitting at a table where someone else had just left a presence behind. A warmth, conversation, half a piece of bread. Tiffany paused. Her brows lifted. Then she turned and sat at the bar instead, pulling out her phone. Luke didn't flinch. He just opened his messages. Cancel the reservation. Tell them I've already met someone. He sent it to his assistant. Then he stared at the empty chair across from him. Still warm. The snow kept falling long after she left. Luke stayed seated for nearly 20 minutes, watching the empty chair like it might suddenly refill itself. The waiter came by twice, offering dessert, coffee, even the menu again. But Luke just shook his head. He'd lost his appetite for anything that came with silver spoons and polished forks. Tiffany eventually left too, without so much as a glance. She texted the agency a complaint, no doubt. Said her match ghosted her. But Luke didn't care. He wasn't looking for Tiffany anymore. He was looking for the girl with cracked fingers and half a smile. The girl who offered him bread when he didn't even realize how starved he was. But he didn't have a last name. No number. No receipt. Only the napkin. He'd picked it up when she left it behind. Folded once, then again. At first glance, it looked like trash. But inside was the tiniest doodle of a loaf of bread with little steam lines. And a word. Gray. Her last name? Or just the way she saw the world. He slipped it into his coat pocket and stood. The next morning, his assistant Mila found him in the office before hours, standing by the wall of cafe photos. The old places, the original concepts. Each one started with something personal, a story, a person, a flavor he couldn't forget. "You're early," she said, blinking at his half-buttoned shirt and slightly uneven tie. "Everything okay?" He held up the napkin. "I need you to find her." Mila tilted her head. "Another ex-chef from the Michelin shortlist?" "No," he smiled. "This one works 3 jobs. Might be a baker. Gave me bread she couldn't afford to share." Mila blinked. "That's all I get? And a possible last name. Gray." She stared at him, then sighed. "You do know that's the surname of about 5,000 women in this city, right?" Luke nodded. "Start with the bakeries. Local ones. On 12th Street. She mentioned that street. Mila raised a brow. "Is this for recruitment?" He met her gaze. "No, this is personal." Something in his voice made her pause. Then quietly she nodded. "I'll see what I can do." 2 days passed. 3. He visited the cafe again, hoping maybe she'd come back for another moment of warmth. She didn't. Instead, he sat at the same table, ordered soup and bread. The same waiter approached. "You were here the other night, yeah? With that girl?" Luke looked up. "Yes. She's nice," the waiter said. "I think she left behind a scarf. One of the kitchen staff thought it belonged to her. It smelled like cinnamon." Luke's heart skipped. "Do you still have it?" The waiter nodded. "I'll check." A moment later, he returned with a faded gray scarf, soft, worn, and fraying at the edges. Luke pressed it to his hand. There it was, cinnamon, and flour, and something like rosemary. He took a breath. This was her. Not a name, not a business card, but something real, a thread, and he planned to follow it. The bell above the bakery door jingled faintly as Luke stepped inside. It was warm here, not in the curated, temperature-controlled way of his own venues, but warm like a body curled under a blanket. Air filled with sugar, yeast, cinnamon, and something faintly citrusy. A place that made you forget there was snow on your shoulders. 3 people stood in line. One mother with a toddler on her hip, a delivery guy waiting for change, and an older man sipping from a paper cup like it was keeping his heart beating. Luke stood back, watched. Behind the counter, a girl in a pale blue apron and flour-streaked cheeks handed out bread with quiet efficiency. Her sleeves were rolled up, her dark hair tied back with a red elastic. She smiled at everyone, not politely but kindly, with her whole face. Alice, there was no mistake. It was the way she tucked a corner of parchment around a still warm loaf, like she was wrapping a gift. The way she spoke to the toddler like she actually cared what he had to say. The way she laughed when the old man asked if they still had those buns that taste like holidays. She belonged here, not because she was stuck, but because she showed up here fully, sincerely. Luke suddenly felt overdressed. He stepped to the side, pretending to read the chalkboard menu while sneaking glances at her hands. Same cracks, same small bandage near the thumb. Same person who'd once handed him her last piece of bread and said, "Bread's comforting, isn't it?" When the line dwindled, she caught his eye and blinked. A soft crease formed in her brow, recognition flickering. "You," she said, surprised but not unpleasantly. He smiled. "Me. You found the bread good enough to come back?" "Better." She leaned forward. "Still sitting at other people's tables?" Luke chuckled. "Only the ones where something real is served." For a second, she didn't say anything. Then, "You didn't look like the kind of man who'd come back." "I didn't either." He glanced around. "You run this place?" She snorted. "Run? No. I just keep it from burning down when the boss is on a smoke break." He smiled. There was no performance in her. No act. Just presence. "Would you like something?" she asked. "I can get you the cranberry rolls before the rush hits." Luke hesitated, then nodded. "One. And whatever you like." "You sure?" "I'm buying. Then I'll pick the best one." She turned to the display and reached for a small, glazed bun. He watched the way she moved, quick, efficient, but not rushed. She knew the rhythm of this place. She made it better just by being in it. As she handed him the bag, their fingers brushed. Neither said anything. He took a quiet breath. "Can I ask you something?" he said carefully. Alice leaned on the counter slightly. "Shoot. Why did you sit with me that night?" She tilted her head. "I don't know. You looked lonely. Not the dramatic kind. Just the quiet kind." Luke swallowed. "And I guess I know what that feels like," she added. The door chimed. More customers entered. She straightened. "I should go," she said, stepping back behind the register. He nodded, gripping the bag. "I'll see you around?" he asked. She smiled, already greeting the next person. "If you don't sit at the wrong table again, maybe." The cranberry bun was still warm in his coat pocket when Luke stepped back into his office. He didn't eat it right away. He sat by the window instead, watching the city move beneath him like a living, breathing thing. Cars, smoke, rushing people. So much noise, yet none of it louder than the silence he'd left behind at the bakery. He wanted to go back, not because he had anything else to say, but because he hadn't wanted to leave. 3 days later, A small bakery review appeared in a digital food blog. It wasn't major press, just a neighborhood piece, the kind his PR team usually ignored. But this time, someone forwarded it to Alice. "Jenna, look, that guy from the cafe, isn't that him?" The message read, "Luke Sanders. I just put two and two together. And your bakery is in the background of this shot. Girl, what is happening?" Alice stared at the screen. There he was, smiling faintly, in a gray coat, holding a paper bag. And behind him, blurred but unmistakable, her, standing at the register, flower on her sleeve, laughing. She reread the name, Luke Sanders, restaurant mogul, millionaire, philanthropist, the soul behind the city's most elite culinary experiences. Her heart sank. He never told her. That evening, when the door chimed and he walked in again, same soft eyes, same casual coat. She didn't greet him. Not right away. She finished ringing up a customer, stepped away, then walked to the back without a word. Luke followed, gently knocking against the wall beside the storage shelves. "Alice." She turned. "I saw it," she said. "The article." He exhaled. "I didn't plan that. It wasn't. You didn't tell me." "I know. You sat across from me, ate bread I split in half, and never thought I deserved the truth. It wasn't that." His voice was low. "I didn't want to ruin it. For once, someone looked at me and didn't see a resume. Or a wallet. You just saw me." She stared at him. "But now I can't unsee it." Silence. Heavy. Honest. He took a step closer. "I'm sorry." Alice crossed her arms. "You know what the worst part is?" She whispered. "I felt safe with you. Like I could be real. Now, I don't know if I was just part of a story you tell your rich friends. Remember that time I sat with a poor girl and she gave me bread?" "No," he said firmly. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it, Luke?" He looked down. "It was the first time I didn't feel like I had to perform. The first time I laughed because someone meant it. It was you." Alice didn't move. Didn't soften. Not yet. "I need time," she said quietly. Luke nodded. He left the bag on the counter. Inside a single roll, still warm, and underneath it, the napkin she once drew on. Folded, preserved, returned. It was snowing again, the soft kind. Flakes that didn't rush or sting, just wandered gently from sky to shoulder, like they didn't want to be noticed. Luke sat at the same table where it all began. No reservations this time. No hidden profiles. No scripted dates. Just him. A coat, a scarf, and a small plate with two warm slices of bread. He didn't expect her to come. Not after how things ended. But every evening for the past 3 days he returned to that same spot. Ordered tea and bread and left the second chair empty. Not as a symbol, but as an invitation. Alice stood across the street watching. The snow clung to her sleeves. Her boots were soaked. She didn't even know why she came. Part of her still felt foolish, angry, but part of her remembered. How he smiled when she gave him half a piece of rye. How he laughed at a line she didn't mean to be funny. How he didn't flinch at the cracks in her hands or the truth in her words. She hadn't forgiven everything. But maybe it wasn't about forgiving. Maybe it was about starting again. Not at a fancy table, but at the same one with the same bread. She stepped inside. He didn't see her at first. She walked quietly, sat down across from him, and picked up the smaller piece of bread without a word. Tore off a corner, took a bite, then looked up. "You remembered the rye." His eyes lifted. Slowly, without rushing, he smiled. It was never about the bread. She held his gaze. But it started there, she said. He nodded. Would you let me start again? She looked down, breaking the bread in half, then pushed one piece toward him. I just did. Outside, the snow kept falling. But inside the small cafe, everything felt warmer. No promises, no labels, no performance. Just two people. And one quiet plate between them, where the first real thing they ever shared was enough.